Wonderful. All right, we'll go ahead and kick it off. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Karen Houghton. I'm the founder and CEO of Infinite Giving. At Infinite Giving, we work with nonprofits all across the country, helping them build financial strength. So, whether that's managing reserves, investing long-term funds, or helping organizations receive stock, crypto, DEF gifts, one thing we consistently see and hear with our clients is this, that when financial pressure rises, fundraising conversations start to feel different. Leaders feel the stakes more intensely, more pressure is put on you, boards become more engaged, which could be good and challenging. And often we all just become more anxious. And those donor conversations that once felt really relational can often become urgent, right? And that's the tension that we're exploring today. So the title of this webinar is Major Gifts When the Stakes Are High. But today's session isn't just about fundraising scripts or persuasion tactics. Instead, we want to talk about something much more foundational. And that's really how nonprofit leaders like you are making the right decisions before a major gift meeting ever even happens. Because very often that's what determines the outcome of that major donor conversation. That outcome happens long before anyone sits down at the table together. And that's where today's guest brings tremendous experience. So, Joanna, we're so excited to have you back again with us on another webinar. For those of y'all who don't know, Joanna has worked on major gift efforts totaling more than $100 million. She's been on every side of the major gift conversation, leading institutions, working inside advancement teams, and partnering closely with boards and nonprofit leaders. Today, she's the founder and CEO of Inspired Generosity, where she helps nonprofit leaders build those deep relationships that inspire extraordinary generosity. So, Joanna, we're glad you're here. Anything else you want to add?
I'm grateful to be here. This is one of my favorite topics. So, yeah, let's get going.
Great. And you're so good at it. So I'm excited to dive in. And of course, as we're going, I've got some questions for Joanna. I know we want to use everyone's time wisely. But if you have any Q&A, we're going to just go ahead and put that in the Q&A box below. And throughout the discussion, as we see them, we will do our best to address as many as we can. So Q&A is open and we'll go through that as we go. All right. So let's start with a situation that many nonprofit leaders recognize. It's that moment when a funding gap appears. We wish it didn't happen, but it almost always does at some point. Maybe a project needs support sooner than expected. The board starts asking questions about financial runway. A grant didn't come through. A major donor pulls out. Suddenly, conversations that may have happened months from now, all of a sudden you're getting pressure to schedule those next week. So that's where I want to start. So, Joanna, in your experience working on these major gift efforts totaling more than $100 million, which congratulations, that's amazing. What are some of the most common mistakes that happen before a donor meeting is even scheduled?
So, that keyword is before. I mean, the preparation is everything. And oftentimes, when people think about preparing, they're preparing how they're going to perform, right? They're going to think about what am I going to say? How am I going to present myself? What am I going to wear? How am I going to make the ask? And all of that just contributes to so much stress and anxiety, and it actually makes things more awkward and uncomfortable. So I like to tell my clients that when you're preparing, first of all, think about the goal. So if your goal is to ask someone for help, right? Especially if you're feeling desperate and you're looking for someone to maybe rescue, okay? That dynamic is not where you want to start. You want to shift that perspective and remember nobody likes to ask for help, and no one likes to be put in the position of savior or rescuer. And so, what you're looking for is somebody who wants to solve the same problem you do, right? And they're just as passionate, and they can use their financial resources to participate. So, when you reframe it, in the preparation, you have to reframe it. So you have to prepare emotionally, is what I'm trying to say. Now, a mistake that people also make is they prepare just for one half. They prepare for what am I going to say instead of also preparing for what are the questions I want to ask. You don't want to go in there and just talk at them, right? So I really think that this is most of what we're going to talk about today is about the preparation, preparing yourself strategically, intellectually, and preparing yourself emotionally.
Mhm. I heard someone once say that, and I love it, and I can't remember who said it, but they were like, "Hey, it's so important." Like, and maybe it was you, Joanna. Like, they're not your donors. Is that you? They're like, it's not your donors. It is more like you get to be the recipient for that donor's generosity, right? So the donor's the one in control, and then they're able to choose like, hey, I can be a generous giver. Where do I want my philanthropy and my purpose and my pocketbook to go? And sometimes even that framework shift then helps you ask questions rather than coming in with a pitch. Have you ever heard that saying?
I haven't, but I get it. I think that we're more like a matchmaker,
Mhm.
right? We're not trying to get something from someone. We want to help, well, but we do want to help them have a meaningful giving experience. It's really, it can be beautiful. So much of it is up here.
Hmm. What percent of people do you think are approaching these conversations like as a pitch?
Most. Even seasoned professionals, because it's just so easy to get tied up in our performance. And there's actually books out there on how to make an ask, as if you say the words just right, it's all up to the how you say the words. And I was just thinking when I was reflecting on what our conversation is going to be about, I was like, can I remember a single time where I can I remember what I said specifically? I think back to all the major gifts. I can't. I can remember how they responded. I remember where we were. I remember those moments, but I don't remember what I said because I wasn't focused on any sort of script. It was way more natural.
Amazing. And I know we're going to get into that as we go. And so much of even setting the table before these conversations is often about, where donor confidence and kind of their interest in engaging with you that way is often tied to financial clarity. So when leaders, these nonprofit leaders and these development folks are building those relationships, they need to understand their runway, their reserves, their long-term financial strategies, because that allows them to show up in those conversations much more grounded. And that steadiness is really changing the tone of conversations quite often. I know one of the insights you share that I think is incredibly helpful for leaders is that shift in thinking where many nonprofit leaders are preparing a major gift meeting by asking, like you said, what do I say? And instead, you encourage leaders to ask different questions like, hey, what decisions need to be made before this meeting happens? And so that's what I want to explore with you. So let's start off with like, why do leaders tend to focus so much on what to say rather than the decisions that should come first?
Well, you need to do both. So I think focusing on what you're going to say is really important because you don't want to go in there and just talk about all the things you do. You want to talk about why, like what is the problem you're setting out to solve. You want to make sure you're articulating your case for support, essentially, and that you're not going to go in there and just talk too much, right? So you need to think carefully about what do I want to say. That's important. And let me give you an analogy. I think about a jazz musician. You know how they practice their scales like so intensely so that when it's time to play with their fellow musicians, they can just improvise. They can show up and just go with the flow and create amazing music. But that's because they've prepared really well, like so well that it's embodied in them. It's not something they have to rehearse and memorize. So that, yes, you need to focus on what you're going to say, and I think it's really important. But once you focus on it and you prepare, then let that be, and then show up as a real human. Show up and be natural and be able to respond. So that's I think I don't know if that's exactly how you wanted, if that's the right answer to your question, but that's how I
Yeah,
see it.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways. I recently was at the Faith and Fundraising Conference in Chicago. So a lot of the workshops were through a faith lens. But I remember one person who was teaching, and actually she was attending, and she said, her biggest check that she had ever gotten on behalf of her organization was seven figures. And she said they had two meetings and they never actually talked or made the ask for a check, that the donor really just wanted to engage in like her and her life and prayer and praying for them and like how all of that kind of fit together about purpose and mission and their faith. And then a check just came from that. And she was like, I don't even know what happened. Like I was just there present, like trying to be in relationship with this person and asking questions and listening. And then I mean, I know it's not that simple. I wish we could all have that story, but it was really a beautiful reminder that kind of reflects what you're saying.
Exactly. You know, every person's different. Some
Mhm.
people want to really engage quite a bit. Others, it's more transactional. In fact, some of the largest gifts I've ever been a part of have not been as emotional as some of the smaller gifts. So it really just depends. But back to the preparation, how you prepare matters a lot.
Mhm. So, what are some of those key internal decisions that need to be made before you even schedule a major donor meeting?
Well, first of all, are we meeting with the right people? So my philosophy is less but better. I would rather have you spend your time with those who are most likely to say yes, who are going to be your best partners. So that would be, do they have the capacity to make the kind of gift that you're wanting to ask for or you want to invite them to make? Do they have a track record of being generous? Do they have a genuine interest in solving the same problem? And how strong is that relationship? So you need to make sure you've checked all those boxes. And if
Mhm.
you know them well enough, and it just feels like, okay, this makes sense as a next natural step, it's you're on the right track and it's not going to come as a big surprise. So make in terms of decision, is this the right person? Have we made sure? And how is that relationship progressing? So that those are kind of the decisions in terms of determining timing.
Okay, how do you know if it's the right person? Because sometimes I hear stuff where it's like, oh, some major gifts are coming from people who were just monthly givers for a decade of like $100 a month, but they did it for 10 years. Or maybe it's somebody who had never given and you get a check. Like how do you know who they are? And how do you know that they are the right people to approach?
It's not usually random. So there are times where you randomly get a gift, a large gift from someone, and that's a flag, and you go, oh, I need to make a call. I need to find out what's the story, what's the motivation here. But when if you're doing this professionally and you're a professional fundraiser, you probably have a portfolio. You have a spreadsheet full of names, and it's really important to rank and prioritize based on those four qualities I mentioned.
Mhm.
You can't really control how much money someone has or how generous they are or if they're really interested. What you can control is the relationship.
Mhm.
So deciding ahead of time, I want to have better, deeper relationships with those who actually can move the needle rather than spreading myself thin and giving my one-on-one attention to as many people as possible in a more scattered way. And I'm not saying the others aren't important, but where the leader or the fundraising professional spends their time, you need to make sure you're spending your time with the right partners.
So, how does this internal clarity or lack of clarity within the organization show up in those donor conversations?
Well, if you're having a conversation and you haven't prepared and you don't have clarity on how, what part of my program am I going to talk about or what part of my nonprofit mission is most important to say, and I didn't prepare or I prepared in the driveway, you're going to come across scattered. You might talk a little bit too fast, a little too much. Maybe you didn't think about basically you're going to be focused on performance and you're not going to be physically there. You're going to be in your head. If you have clarity ahead of time, you're going to be able to show up as your genuine, authentic self, knowing what you want to share, but also, most importantly, knowing that the goal is to make sure we're a fit. And so I want to make sure I share a little and then I get your feedback and how did that land and ask a question here and there. And if it's an early meeting, I'm going to use the 80-20 rule. And I'm going to spend 80% of my time asking you questions. But the bottom line is, this is a human being who just wants to use their money to solve this problem, just like you have your time and expertise. And if we can just normalize that, they're not that much different than us. They just want to use their money to accomplish this. Or,
Yeah,
or
you're
perhaps they
giving
don't.
them, yeah, you're giving them an opportunity. And I
Yeah.
love that. Like you just kind of threw that out, but you said 80% of a first conversation should be questions, which I love that.
And that works. It's a general rule, but there are some people you talk to and that you don't want it to sound like an interview either.
Right.
But I think the default for us, for me anyway, the tendency is to talk too much if I'm not conscious about that.
Mhm. I love that because all of this conversation is interesting because when we're talking about clarity, it's not always about, hey, the donor may not see the financial dashboard inside the organization, but they always can sense that leadership posture. So when development folks are feeling rushed or reactive, donors feel that like urgency and the panic. And as you said earlier, like nobody wants to save a struggling organization necessarily, right? They want to be able to invest in a mission and vision that is going to continue to make impact. So when those leaders are feeling steady and thoughtful about their long-term financial picture, that's where donors are more likely to lean in.
Can I just say something though that, not everyone has the luxury of a lot of time and it's real.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like if we don't have this money in 3 months, we close. So in those situations, you can still, you might be looking for a bridge gift from a loyal supporter. Like this is the plan, and we are looking for some support so that we can bridge this gap. And there is some urgency around it. Urgency is never, it's not a problem if it's an urgency necessarily. Um, I just think, I want to recognize that not everybody has the luxury of a lot of time. So you want to be real and transparent, but also manage your emotions and recognize that your anxiety will not help.
Yes.
And only have those kinds of conversations with people who are already close to the mission, who are already supportive. You wouldn't go to a stranger for an emergency bridge gift.
Right. Good call out. And so actually, let's define this. How do you define a major gift? Like what size are we
Oh,
talking about?
it's all relative.
Hmm.
So a lot of times when I talk to a small nonprofit, they'll say anything over $1,000 would be amazing. Sometimes it's 10,000, sometimes it's more. When I was at Michigan State, if it was under a million, no, let me see. It was a special gift was like was under 10,000. What was it? And then there was like 10 to 100,000, but I know that if it wasn't over 100,000, it really wasn't considered a major gift.
Mm.
100 grand was considered major gift. So but look at the size of our goal. So it's all relative.
Yes. I know. I feel like probably everybody listening is like, that's a major gift for us. Like yes to all the things. Okay. Is there ever a time where a nonprofit leader should not be talking about major gifts or not be thinking about it?
Well, I think we're all aware that, you know, we would rather have fewer gifts, but larger ones, right? And so we want to, if I understand your question, let me make sure. Can you clarify that? I want to make sure I
Yeah,
answer.
I went off script
Okay.
with that one. So I'm
Well,
throwing
it's,
you a curveball, but it is like I'm like, man, is there ever a time is any nonprofit leader where we should not be engaging in a major gift conversation?
oh,
Or
okay.
is that something that like, you know what, from no matter where you are financially, like even if we're like, because we're like, hey, it's a bridge gift that can be it's like don't have the feelings, but also you have the feelings, or we're really established and we want to grow an endowment. Like there's so many
Right.
layers to this conversation, and we're talking about engaging in it. I guess I was just wondering, is there ever a time where you would say, let's not engage in it and hold off?
Probably not. And maybe there would be a situation, but in most of my experience, it's the opposite. Everyone is focusing on cash gifts, which is, we know that's already only 10% of where the wealth lives. And most nonprofit leaders are um, not necessarily focusing on major gifts. Maybe they'd like to, but they're a little intimidated by that. I think every gift matters for sure. But you only have so many hours in a day. And if you really want to solve this problem, you need money like you need fuel. And if you can get that money with a small group of major gift support, terrific. Um, but if you spend all your energy on gifts that really aren't going to move the needle much, you're going to burn out. So
Yeah.
I think major gifts are almost always really, really important. But in terms of making sure you're talking to the right person who has the capacity to make a major gift really matters.
Hmm. We talk a lot about that at Infinite Giving of like moving from a scarcity mindset to a strategy mindset to a sustainability mindset. And kind of those major gifts often are like a piece of getting out of that scarcity mindset, but it's a part of that strategy with the goal of getting to sustainability. Because to your point, those big gifts are what move the needle most.
Yeah.
We actually have a really good question from Kareem who came in and he says he's curious to hear if there's a distinction between your approach for operational versus capital campaign major gifts.
Mhm. Um, we are much more comfortable asking for major gifts when it's for a capital campaign. But the reality is, some people, most people understand you need operational support. And I think that it's completely reasonable to have major gift conversations, whether it's for capital or programs or whatever. It's a matter of what does the generous person want to accomplish? Are they looking to invest? They want a legacy gift and they want to make a gift of an endowment and make it that way. Someone else, it's all personal preference. So you don't only have to wait until you're in a capital campaign to ask for large, substantial gifts. It may feel like it's easier because you have something more tangible, but that's us in our heads. I think when we have real conversations with people, they know that this requires ongoing, lasting support.
Yeah. I love that. And that goes back to kind of your original point of just like asking questions in that relationship and learning each of those donors to be, hey, what kind of impact do you want your wealth to have? Like how are you thinking about your generosity and being able to kind of guide it and know, oh, they maybe are an endowment, like that's a world that they want to live in, or maybe they do like, the idea of just operationally funding those things. So I do think there's a lot of opportunities to learn kind of where they are and give them different opportunities within those conversations. Great question. All right. So is there a time when leaders can tell when the timing is right for a major gift conversation? And like, are there warning signs too that, hey, that donor is not ready for that conversation?
Okay, so imagine like if you're talking with your colleagues about, okay, we want to invite this person for a gift. Does this make sense? Do you feel
Hmm.
comfortable? If you don't know how much to invite them for, if you don't know what the amount ought to be, or you don't know how they make their decisions or when they make their decisions, you're not really, if you're not sure, you're probably not ready. You probably don't know them well enough to be having that conversation. So it kind of goes back to how well do you know them? Have they been progressing from awareness to some sort of involvement and interest? Is it growing? Are they ready? Because you don't want to surprise anyone. It should never come across as a surprise. Does it just feel like it's the next natural step? And if not, what needs to be done between now and when you want to ask to, test the waters and check in and what can we do to help deepen that engagement? So if you don't know and you're full of like, oh, I sure hope, you're probably not ready.
Fair. Is there a certain time where we know if they're ready?
Yeah, yeah. I think if you're asking the right kinds of discovery questions throughout the relationship, you're
Mhm.
going to know.
Yeah.
And you can always ask permission to ask later. You can always say, you know what? Um, when this project, I see a project coming down the road, if there's one that really lines up with what you're interested in, would you be comfortable having a gift conversation? And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, let's talk in November because that's when we do our giving. Or they'll say, or sometimes you can even test a range. Like, would you even make a gift in the range of 25, $30,000? And they might say, uh, no, we never make gifts that large, but you didn't ask them. You just asked if they would be, if that's
Right.
a range. Or they might say, yeah, yeah, we do that all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not always appropriate to do that, but sometimes it's really
Yeah.
how well you know them.
Yeah,
getting comfortable with having these, with normalizing these conversations.
I love that.
Money's just a tool.
Yeah. We have another question from Ross, and he said, how do you know when someone is a target for a major gift? He said, I've had two seven-figure gifts. So good job, Ross. Two seven-figure gifts, one after four meetings and one after 2 years of slow relationship building. We want to protect our time and prioritize. So, how do you know who you should nurture and not risk disqualifying someone who could give substantially if we're patient?
Well, when you said the word target, I was like, no, I just kind of flinched when you said target. Who can we target for? Because we're not
Mm,
trying to go after people, but that's just language, right?
right.
I think that again, whoever asked this question just pointed out this amazing thing that it's so individual. There's one person who might not need a lot of cultivation. Maybe there are reasons we don't even know that they're already ready. And
Yeah.
you need to build trust slowly. So how do you know? It's by building a genuine, authentic relationship with that person, having real conversations and talking about it. Are you ready? Are you
Mm,
ready for a gift conversation? Can we set that up? Um, if you really think they are, hey, can we have that gift conversation? If you think they're not, it's a lot of it's intuitive, it's emotional intelligence, it's kind
mm.
of how does it feel?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish it was easier, right? I wish it could just be like there was a big neon light that was like, yes, talk to this person and not this person. But there's so nuanced of just understanding timing and interest and generosity. And I know we've talked to some folks and they got a major gift and it was with somebody who was literally like $20 a month donation for years, but then they left a large gift within their will. So
Mhm.
when they passed, then this organization got a really nice six-figure gift, and they were like, "We never would have thought this tiny little donor." Right. But that consistency, and then they were able to come, essentially, the family had wealth once they passed, and then they were able to honor their wishes. So you
And
never know.
that doesn't necessarily mean that had you known, you could have gotten a larger gift from that person. It just means that that person, maybe their wealth was tied up in their estate and they wanted to make a larger gift at the end of their life. Didn't mean you messed up by missing that. But it's a delightful surprise, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what does a donor conversation feel like when it's going well?
Oh, it's so much fun. Um, I remember, well, I have memories of people, one woman in particular started to cry because she was crying because she was so emotionally moved by the fact this gift was going to happen. It was so exciting and it brought tears. Sometimes I enjoy it because when we've already had the gift discussion and they want to make this gift, then we can talk about methods. And it's fun. I love talking about non-cash options. And so you get to talk about what's the best way, because remember, the goal is to give them a meaningful giving experience. So you can start talking about what's the best way. And sometimes that can result in a larger gift because you can save them money and that sort of thing. So there, to me, when it goes right, there's just everyone's excited because look what we get to do together. Now we have the fuel, we have the time and the expertise, and we can do this. It's fun. It's funny because most people think, well, I'd never want to be a fundraiser, like, ugh. And it's like, oh, you don't understand. When people say that, it's genuinely a privilege. You get to help someone use their money to make a difference and make a difference in a way that matters to them. And what are their other options? They can spend their money. And the more you have, the more you own, the more it owns you. You can spend it, you can save it. In many cases, they've got enough and their children have more than they do. And they have this opportunity to give, and giving's beautiful when it's handled well. Oops, I can't hear you, Karen. I think you're muted
Oh,
suddenly.
sorry. Well
There we go.
said. All right, we have another question. It said, how can we utilize wealth screening data to help inform who is and isn't ready for a conversation? How do you feel about wealth screening data?
I think, technology can be helpful. You can learn some things and it's important to do some research, but it's only part of the story. Just because someone has a lot of wealth doesn't mean they're necessarily generous. It's a tool, but keep it in its place because you learn much, much more about someone when you are talking to their peers or you're talking to them directly. Um, the more information you have, the more thoughtful you can be, and that's the goal.
Mhm.
So if
Yeah.
that well screening data helps you determine the appropriate range, great. But I don't, it's not always necessary.
Were you using it when you closed your 100 million?
Well, it wasn't one gift.
Right. But like over the years, were you using it pretty commonly or no?
No, not always. Sometimes I was with smaller organizations that we didn't even have that. And then when I was at Michigan State, we had a research department, right? And so you'd get all the data, you'd get more than you even needed. So it just depends. I would not say my success was due to having that information. It's a piece of the puzzle is all.
All right, great. All right, well, I know we're coming up at time, but I want to ask a final kind of real tactical question. So, if a nonprofit leader listening today um, is preparing for a major donor conversation in the next few weeks, what is one kind of mindset shift or piece of advice that you would want them to carry into that moment?
Your job is not to ask for help, ask for money, ask for relief. Your job is to look for this person. Hopefully, this is who you're going to meet with, somebody who wants to solve the same problem and invite them to participate. And Karen, we didn't talk about like invitation language. And I think I told you, like, I don't remember the exact words, but I will say if you're planning to make an ask, so they say, or, invite someone to make a gift, the outcome is the hero. It's not the organization, and it's certainly it shouldn't be the generous person. There's a lot of traditional fundraising, they say, make the donor the hero. Well, that just makes things really awkward and comfortable because now you have this rescuer dynamic. No, make the outcome the hero. What I mean by
I
that is,
love that.
no,
Yes.
we're working together to make this outcome happen. So focus on the outcome and then why they care, and then invite them to participate. And that just makes it, like I said, it's a lot of fun. It's normal. It's
Yeah.
it's special. Yeah.
I love that. I know we've had a flurry of questions come in,
Okay.
well, if we're okay, let's take a couple minutes, see if we can plow through a couple more. As a small foundation serving a limited area, how do we reach out to those who can be helpful in a major capital campaign?
So there's this myth that the wealth is going to come from rich and famous people we don't know. But the reality is 7 out of 10 Americans give in the United States, and typically it's the person in church, it's the person in your grocery store, it's the neighbors next door. They don't necessarily look like they have wealth, but there's wealth in every community. So look for those, you could start at the core. If you have a board or you have a partnership council, or you have people who can help you identify those who have the interest, the capacity, and a track record of being generous. Start with those you know. And there's a book, it's called The Power of Who, I think. And it's about how we know everyone we need to know. We know a lot more people between your own connections and then the people you're connected to and their connections. Start at the core. In every community, there is more than enough wealth. In fact, there is more. My mission is to unblock the flow of generosity because I really believe there's no shortage of money. There's 300 and some $billion sitting in donor advised funds. There's so much money and there's so much need. Um, it's fundraising itself can block the flow. So we want to kind of
Mhm.
stop the fundraising tactics, start inspiring people to give. And I'm sorry that was a long answer to your quick question. Just really passionate about this.
No, I love and the inspiring to give. Like if that's the assignment, that does feel very different than go ask somebody for money,
Oh,
right?
inspire instead of solicit.
Yeah. Um, what's the appropriate check-in post-gift with newer donors? I don't want to overwhelm them. I love how tactical that one is.
What's the check? What was it again?
The appropriate check-in post-gift with newer donors. So like, so
Oh,
they give you a
oh,
gift and then it's like, you don't want to seem, too
oh.
eager.
Well, I would say thank them immediately. Pick up the phone the minute you get that check. You want to thank people right away. But there's another myth I want to mention. It's called donor fatigue.
Mhm.
It's like, there's, to me, I don't think people get tired of giving or get tired of helping. They get tired of being hit up for money. They get tired of being treated like a wallet. And that I don't think if somebody's having an incredible giving experience and you've shown them how their gift made a difference in someone's life, they're going to say, "What else can I do?" They're not going to get tired. Nobody gets tired of using their money for good. They get tired of the tactics.
Which then takes us full circle really to like, hey, it's not asking for that money. It's how are you inspiring generosity, which is what you do, which is beautiful. All right. Well, I think we are at time. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but this has been incredibly helpful and inspiring. I know one thing that I feel like stands out to me from the whole conversation is that these strong major gift conversations don't start in the meeting itself, right? There's leadership decisions beforehand, there's relationship building, there's thoughtfulness, and there's a lot of reframing. So, Joanna, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your insight with us today. I know if anyone listening would like to connect with Joanna or learn more about her work, you can visit inspire-generosity.com. And of course, at Infinite Giving, we're always happy to chat. You can schedule financial and asset giving consultation on our website at infiniteGiving.com. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Thank you for the important work you're doing. It matters deeply, and thoughtful leadership around generosity is one of the many ways that organizations like yourselves can build lasting impact. So, thank you again, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.